President Trump's executive orders and federal judges once again go toe-to-toe. CBS is caught maliciously editing Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem's interview on Sunday, and both Democrats and legacy media spent the entire weekend claiming President Trump being alive was a conspiracy. I'm Tony Kinnett, host of the Daily Signal's Tony Kinnett Cast, syndicated nationally at 7 p.m. Eastern. It is Tuesday, September 2nd, 2025. Hope you had a great Labor Day weekend, because this is the Daily Signal's top news in 10. So many executive orders and court fights, so little time. On Friday, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit ruled President Donald Trump's global tariffs to be illegal about 30 minutes after futures closed. The ruling, of course, coming out ahead of Labor Day weekend, means some rather shaky questions going in for the markets opening Tuesday morning. And this order is with a couple of conditions. So this is expected to be appealed to the Supreme Court, both because of President Trump's post, as well as a couple of questions the Court of Appeals didn't quite settle. Essentially, they put a deadline for October 14th before the tariffs are no longer allowed to stay up. So they have ruled them illegal, or ruled them unlawful, more accurately, but they are allowing them to proceed until the president can appeal to the Supreme Court. Here is what the particular text in the Court of Appeals order stated. We affirm the CIT's holding that the trafficking and reciprocal tariffs imposed by the challenged executive orders exceed the authority delegated to the president by IEEPA's text. We also affirm the CIT's grant of declaratory relief that the orders are, quote, invalid as contrary to law. President Trump responded on Friday, as you might expect, over on Truth Social, saying, quote, all tariffs are still in effect. Today, a highly partisan appeals court incorrectly said that our tariffs should be removed, but they know the United States of America will win in the end. If these tariffs ever went away, it would be a total disaster for the country. It would make us financially weak, and we have to be strong. The USA will no longer tolerate enormous trade deficits and unfair tariffs and non-tariff trade barriers imposed by other countries, friend or foe, that undermine our manufacturers, farmers, and everyone else. If allowed to stand, this decision would literally destroy the United States of America. At the start of this Labor Day weekend, we should all remember that tariffs are the best tool to help our workers and support companies that produce great made-in-America products. For many years, tariffs were allowed to be used against us by our uncaring and unwise politicians. Now, with the help of the United States Supreme Court, we will use them to the benefit of our nation and make America rich, strong, and powerful again. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And a Biden appointee judge in the Washington, D.C. Federal District Court, Judge Sparkle Leah Suknanan, is blocking the return of about 600 children who arrived in the United States alone, currently in the custody of the Department of Health and Human Services Office of Refugee Resettlement. Suknanan was previously critical of child separation, but now she has issued a temporary order blocking the return of 76 unaccompanied Guatemalan children from the United States to Guatemala who had agreed to take the children back in order to reunite them with their parents. So to put that in layman's terms, there are 76 sets of parents, more or less, in Guatemala waiting for the return of minors that the governments of the United States and Guatemala had agreed to send the minors to their parents in Guatemala. For Judge Sparkle Suknanan to turn down because she stated that there is a humanitarian concern. I will provide for you White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller's response. These smuggled migrant children were orphaned in America by the Biden administration. The minors have all self-reported that their parents are back home in Guatemala, but a Democrat judge is refusing to let them reunify with their parents. The government of Guatemala has formally requested their return, and there are tens of thousands more smuggled minors orphaned in America by the Biden administration that Democrats are refusing to allow back home with their families. Correct, their goal is to keep these migrant minors in the USA forever and never let them go home. The Democrat Party is fully committed to the proposition of infinite child trafficking. And speaking of matters pertaining to not only the Department of Justice, but also the Department of Homeland Security and matters of illegal immigration, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem appeared on an interview with CBS Face the Nation over the weekend. Kristi Noem was asked about Kilmar Abrego Garcia the individual from El Salvador who had illegally immigrated to the United States, was credibly accused of being a human trafficker and a wife-beater with MS-13 symbology tattooed on his knuckles, child endangerment, a couple of things that are perhaps worth more than the particular moniker of, quote, Maryland man, end quote, from legacy media outlets like CBS. When Noem was given a chance to respond about the current status of Abrego Garcia's return to the international areas at large, this time being sent to Uganda, this was Noem's response.
One of the most high-profile examples of someone who's been rounded up by ICE in recent months is Kilmar Abrego Garcia, and the fate of his situation is still up in the air. He's awaiting trial on human smuggling charges set for January in Tennessee. But your department's also working to get him deported to Uganda. If he broke the law in this country, as the administration alleges, shouldn't he be held here and face charges here instead of being deported?
Well, prosecution decisions are always made by the Department of Justice and Pam Bondi's department, so we will let them do that, although this individual does have criminal charges pending. He has charges pending against him civilly as well, and the one thing that we will continue to do is to make sure that he doesn't walk free in the United States of America.
I heard you say that we're going to let the Justice Department do that. Does that mean the push to deport him to Uganda is off?
Oh, we will still continue to pursue all options.
Okay.
We will make sure that he's not released into this country. So regardless of that, yes, absolutely. He's not an American citizen and he shouldn't be here. And especially because of his dangerous criminal activities, we should ensure that we leave every avenue on the table.
Unfortunately, CBS then chose to cut off the interview before Kristi Noem could finish her description of the crimes Kilmar Abrego Garcia has been shown to have committed with fairly sufficient evidence, although, of course, a conviction hasn't yet been levied. Here's the spot CBS cut out.
This individual was a known human smuggler, a MS-13 gang member, an individual who was a wife beater, and someone who was so perverted that he solicited nude photos from minors, and even his fellow human traffickers told him to knock it off. He was so sick in what he was doing and how he was treating small children. So he needs to never be in the United States of America, and our administration is making sure we're doing all that we can to bring him to justice.
Now, various outlets over on the legacy side of things attempted to frame this entire story as Kristi Noem accusing CBS of deceptively editing the interview about Kilmar Abrego Garcia. At least that is how over on The Hill, Sarah Fortinsky put it. Various other outlets followed in suit. Of note, CBS has a rather concerning recent history regarding editing presidential candidates and administration officials' interviews. For example, former President Joe Biden's interview on 60 Minutes was edited maliciously, deceptively, however you want to put it, in order to suggest the president was fully alert and not being woken up and prompted every couple of minutes. Former Vice President Kamala Harris had her interview and answers specifically edited to make her appear more coherent about questions regarding Israel and their Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. CBS and 60 Minutes have since paid a multi-million-dollar settlement to the Trump team. Outlet after outlet after outlet took a couple of days over the last week to fuel a very strange conspiracy that because President Donald Trump had not been seen for between 36 and 48 hours, this meant he was deceased, and Vice President J.D. Vance was secretly running the country. The kickoff for these series of rumors came from a comment from Vice President Vance saying that Trump was, of course, going to serve out the remainder of his term, but, quote, God forbid there's a terrible tragedy. He can't think of a better on-the-job training than what he's received in the last 200 days as vice president. Outlets like the New York Times, Axios, the Washington Post, from suggesting things like this being from NYT, quote, U.S. President Trump has deliberately disappeared. The reason he did is to get to know his relatives. Of course, this was all popped when President Trump was seen golfing with his granddaughter, Kai. On August the 30th, on the south lawn of the White House, that was where they were preparing to head to Trump National Golf Course in Sterling, Virginia. Reagan Reese, the White House correspondent for the Daily Caller and a regular on the Tony Kinnett cast, also pointed out, here's me and the president before our interview yesterday. He's very much alive. More coming soon. Before you go, head down to the description and make sure you're subscribed to the Tony Kinnett cast. And join us tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern for a roundup of the day's news and nonsense and a little bit more on this executive order judicial boxing match that, yes, might even include a new round on voter ID. I'm Tony Kinnett, and this has been the Daily Signal's Top News in 10. Take care.